we say there are three major categories of terrorist threat. It's not exclusive. These are the major categories: the cartels, the jihadis, and the left-wing extremists. But to quote a good friend of mine, you know who you are, the facts are the bullets are mostly traveling in one direction, from leftist lunatics to conservative targets.
Now, our newsmaker this evening is a prominent national security analyst, a conservative media host, and a pivotal figure in shaping the US administration's hardline foreign policy. He joins us tonight to discuss the controversial new 2026 US counter-terrorism strategy, which he authored amid rising global tensions and shifting political poles. His insights come at a critical moment for American national security as the White House pulls out all the stops for the historic 250th anniversary of the nation's independence. Sebastian Gorka is Deputy Assistant to the President and Senior Director for Counterterrorism. Let's start with something a bit fun if we can, and that is, of course, 250 years since America declared independence. There's lots of stuff going on. How are you celebrating?
Got a couple of options here. There's a series of tents right in front of the iconic Washington Memorial, in front of which the president will be celebrating the events of our 250th birthday for the greatest nation on God's green earth. That might be a little bit hot, given that we too are also breaking heat records here in the swamp in D.C. So one of the departments, one of the secretaries is having an event on the roof of his building. So whatever my wife decides is the coolest, where I will be.
It's cost, hasn't it, the Great American State Fair this weekend, $14.7 million. I was chatting to our man in Washington yesterday, and he was talking about the fact that these multiple firework displays are under threat because of poor weather. There's a little bit of upset from parents because they don't start till 11 o'clock, and so kids won't be watching those, or not the same number of kids that would normally watch them will be. And our reporter also was talking about Donald Trump's triumphal arch, the Arc de Triomphe, as it's sort of been nicknamed, oozing thick globs of what looks like yellow spray foam. Have you seen it?
Well, that's not the actual arch. That's a tiny replica of the arch, and I was there. I didn't see any oozing globs of foam. And I don't think 11 o'clock at night is very late, given that this is a massive continent-sized nation with 3 time zones, which means actually on California, you will be 8 p.m. at night. And by the way, maybe the kid could take a little nap in the afternoon, because this is the 250th birthday of the Republic. So maybe staying up late a little bit once for this incredible event will be worth it, because I guarantee you, nobody will ever have seen the likes of the firework display the president has in store for us in just a couple of days' time.
Well, it sounds like it's going to be quite the event. Do you think it's value for money? That's the other thing that some commentators are questioning.
Yeah, I'm a little bit, well, not really surprised that this is, the negative spin is all you're interested in. How much is it worth to celebrate freedom, liberty? How much is it worth it for Americans to come together after the divisive years, the 8 years of self-hatred of Obama, the 4 years of open borders insanity and, self-flagellation of the somnambulant Biden administration? So, yeah, I think it's really worth it to celebrate America, because we believe in our country.
OK, well, look, let's talk about counter-terrorism strategy in the United States. Obviously, something that you are heavily invested in, both professionally and personally, I'm sure. In May of this year, you published that strategy. The National Counterterrorism Centre, meanwhile, lacks a permanent director since the departure of Joe Kent. I wonder how then is best to execute this ambitious new strategy. How do you do it?
How is the British government functioning with the loss of the Premier, waiting for the Mancunian mayor to take over?
Well, he is still there for now, Starmer.
And we do have an acting director for the National Counterterrorism Centre. So, no, there is absolutely no problem, because I can tell you the facts of the last 17 months, which are absolutely gobsmacking in their historic significance. Every record broken. And this is outside of the operations against Iran. This is outside of Epic Fury, thanks to the president unleashing our counterterrorism forces from the very beginning beginning of his second administration, and this is now an unclassified datum I can provide to you, our brave warfighters have killed 1,051 jihadis in counterterrorism operations in just the last 17 months. And maybe even more important than the kinetic solution we've applied, thanks to President Trump's leadership, we have rescued 106 American hostages, wrongfully detained American citizens who are back home with their loved ones because of the peace through strength that the president has demonstrated across the world. I myself traveled to Afghanistan to bring one of those American citizens back home. So we are back in the business of counterterrorism, as the president's new counterterrorism strategy amply demonstrates.
Do you want the top job, Seb?
Do I want the top job? I've informed the president I'd be happy to dual hat in that position, but right now I have the dream job. I've waited 26 years of my life to run counterterrorism for the president, which we do from the White House and the National Security Council. And my immediate boss, the Secretary of State, who's also the National Security Advisor, Marco Rubio, is an incredible individual to work for. So I don't plan going anywhere, but as we remind each other here in the White House, we serve at the pleasure of the Commander-in-Chief and the President behind the Resolute desk.
The new America First strategy targets left-wing groups, but doesn't so much talk about far-right extremism. Why is that?
Because of the data. If we were back in the 1990s, if we just had the Oklahoma City bombing, if militias and the Timothy Vaves of the world were detonating massive bombs, then it would be a different document. Sadly, even a left-wing, non-MAGA institution like the CSIS, the Center for Strategic and International Studies, in their empirically backed recent report stated, whilst we may have various forms of political violence in America, it is the left-wing violence that is in ascendance. So sadly, whether it's the multiple attempts on the life of the president, whether it's the murder of my friend Charlie Kirk, left-wing radicals are normalizing the use of violence, and that's the reality we have to deal with. So whether it's the cartels under Stephen Miller's able leadership as Homeland Security Council advisor, whether it is the jihadi global threat that falls under my remit, or whether it is left-wing violence such as Antifa or radical transgender killers that go to Catholic schools to murder 6-year-old children, we will deal with all those varieties of threats. When it comes to secular terrorism, it's the left that is in ascendance.
I mean, yes, but I'm sure people will point to the fact that only 3 years ago or so, right-wing extremist terror incidents were increasing. Over the past 6 years prior to that, they'd seen their sharpest rise yet. So is there an acknowledgement that there still needs to be an awareness of right-wing extreme terror incidents? Because, of course, if you're focusing all of your efforts on left-wing and on others, that may in turn, because the focus has shifted, see a spike again in right-wing extremism.
Well, yeah, the fact is we aren't living 3 years ago. We are living here. Right now, 2026, and the data is clear. And if you read the counterterrorism strategy, which is unclassified, and any one of your listeners and viewers can do so, it's at whitehouse.gov, we say there are 3 major categories of terrorist threat. It's not exclusive. These are the major categories: the cartels, the jihadis, and the left-wing extremists. But to quote a good friend of mine, you know who you are, the facts are the bullets are mostly traveling in one direction, from leftist lunatics to conservative targets, whether it's the former whip of the House, Steve Scalise, almost murdered by a Bernie Sanders campaign volunteer at a charity baseball match not far from where I'm sitting, whether it is the multiple attempts on the president, whether it is the individuals who were involved in numerous assaults against the ICE agents of the United States doing their sworn duty. The left-wing violence is what we have to deal with, not to the exclusion of everything else, but we have to deal with the reality on the ground. It's called common sense.
Okay, all right. Your strategy shifts focus to Mexican drug cartels. Why are they a terrorist threat? Spell it out for our audience. And does neutralising them mean unilateral military action inside Mexico? Is that where you might have to get to?
So why? That's a very good question. As somebody who's done decades of work on counter-jihadi terrorism, I myself had to get used to this new taxonomy, but it's wholly justified. Why? I crunched the numbers. When I had my own television show, I dedicated a whole episode to the question of the damage done by these terroristic groups. And let me just give you, again, the empirical data. In 70 years of war, from the end of World War II to today, 103,000 Americans have died in uniform in combat. So that's Korea, Vietnam, Grenada, Panama, Gulf I, Gulf II, and Afghanistan. So it's 103,000. If you look at the open border policies of the Biden-Harris regime, the last administration, when cartels were allowed to bring their poisons into this country, in one 12-month period, and this is from the Biden CDC health website, we had more Americans killed by the cartels because of those illicit drugs, mostly fentanyl, in one 12-month period than 70 years of combat. We had 110,000 Americans killed by drug overdoses because of the poisons being brought into the country by the cartels. So the president was absolutely right, day one, January 20th, right after his inauguration, to declare that these are a terrorist threat, an existential threat to the national security of the United States. And that's why our incredible law enforcement agencies, DHS, the FBI, CBP, and the Department of War are doing what they have to do to strike fear into these organizations and to make them simply combat ineffective so they don't poison Americans.
Okay. We mentioned a little bit on the borders and immigration. So let's ask you what you think of what the acting Attorney General, Todd Blanche, has said today. He says authorities are going to focus on keeping pregnant non-citizens from giving birth in the United States to acquire birthright citizenship. It comes, of course, after the Supreme Court denied Donald Trump to block automatic citizenship. What does that look like if you are going to do all that you can to focus on keeping pregnant non-citizens from giving birth in the United States? What does that mean? Does that mean deporting very heavily pregnant women as a matter of urgency?
No, it means that we are not going to permit the birthright citizenship mill, the industrialization of giving passports to the children of those who come here explicitly, often from inimical regimes such as the PRC, to give birth and then leave the country a month later with the birth certificate and the passport of that child that is not raised as per the American cultural dominance and the values of this republic. We have more than 25,000 children that are born every year as a function of industrialized birthing and the issuance of U.S. citizenship to children who never grow up in this country. That seems to be anathema to the idea of what it means to be an American. So we're not going to allow any nation to industrialize birthright citizenship. It's just asinine, whether you're the UK, France, or any other country. The idea that this is now an industry, it's just wrong.
Okay, but how does that... So I'll start again on that one.
I'm not responsible for restrictions of visas. I'm the
Yeah, because the questions then arise if a woman from China, for example, comes over to the US on a holiday visa, heavily pregnant, and then has her child on American soil. Technically, according to the law as it stands, that child is given automatic American citizenship. If she's already in the US, are there measures to look at immediately finding her and deporting her? How does this policy work in reality, I suppose, is my question. How is Todd Blanche, how are the DOJ going to meet that promise?
No idea. I'm the head of counterterrorism. That's the question for the Department of Justice,
Yeah.
State Department.
It is problematic, though, isn't it, Sebastian?
What's problematic is 26,000 children being birthed here and then immediately leaving the country with an American passport to exploit this absolutely outrageous seam in what has been deemed to be legal by the Supreme Court. That's what's outrageous. I mean, your idea that we're deporting pregnant women, focus on 26,000 people who don't live here being given our citizenship. That's what's outrageous.
Yeah. I guess it is how you deal with it. Do you prevent pregnant women coming from certain countries?
Why are you obsessing on the pregnant women case?
Well, I'm just curious to know. This has been because authorities are going to focus on keeping pregnant non-citizens from giving birth in the United States, and so it's a very bold thing to say. We understand why you said it or why Todd Blanche has said it, but it's just how it's going to work in actuality, how that is going to be done, and what it looks like effectively. Anyway, let's move on. If you don't have the answers to that, I'm sure we will get them sooner or later. I'd love your opinion on an investigation, the findings of an investigation today. Experts believe that significant numbers of drones flown over 4 sensitive US military bases here in Britain in 2024 were launched from one of 2 Russian Shadow Fleet tankers docked near UK ports in the UK. Is Britain naive to the threat of Russia, do you think, Sebastian?
Naive to the threat of Russia after almost 4 years of war? I think that's a unreasonable statement to make. I am also the head of the President's counter-drone task force, federal task force. So, I was in the UK just last week. I was talking to my counter-terrorism colleagues. I don't think there's a serious nation in Europe, in NATO, that doesn't take the threat of drones as preeminent. I was in Sandhurst just 3 months ago at an international gathering of those who are coming together to deal with the drone threat. So, no, I think that's a rather risible spin on the news. So I doubt there's anyone in Whitehall or anywhere else who's not taking seriously the threat of drones, be they from Russia or anywhere else.
Yeah, I suppose it's just the fact that this was able to go on for months and that these drones were flying over US military bases. We now know it is strongly believed that they were launched from Russian vessels. So it's just whether we were, as on top of that as we should have been. We didn't know where the drones came from for a significant amount of time. It's not until the International Centre for Strategic Studies stepped in that actually looked at the locations of these 2 Russian vessels and landed upon a conclusion which they feel is pretty bang on. So the question really,
they feel that their own conclusion is bang on.
I mean, it is a very credible source, and they've done a huge amount of work on this, and it's just whether the UK is keeping those US air bases as safe as they should be, I suppose.
So here, the key issue is to understand that there's a bifurcation of what the drone threat represents. As a result of Ukraine, and rightly so, there is a focus on the kinetic aspect of the drone threat. The fact that 70% of all casualties in the Ukraine war are a function not of small arms fire or artillery, but actual first-person FPV drones is a shocking reality we all have to come to terms with. But perhaps this report, which I welcome the publishing of, could help illustrate is that the drone dominance or the drone technology we're seeing everywhere isn't just about kinetic attack in a battlefield scenario. It's also a counterintelligence threat as well. So we have to understand that the drone isn't just a platform for delivering a kinetic effect. It is also potentially an incredibly useful platform for gathering in intelligence. And hopefully this report will lead to those who are in a position of responsibility, taking the requisite counterintelligence measures to deal with this threat.
Yeah, as we're talking about Russia, we've obviously been hugely consumed by the US-Iran war, but I wonder what's happened with Greenland. Does Donald Trump still want that for national security?
Look, I am the head of counterterrorism, so you're swimming into Russia issues, and then now you're swimming into Greenland issues. So not my remit. But if people want to understand what the president is doing, I always tell them, listen to what he says, read his Truth Social posts. But in the case of Greenland, it's really easy. Get out a map. In my office, I'm old school. In my SCIF, my classified office, I have a globe. Look at a globe and look at the position of Greenland. And also go online, do a little bit of a internet search on what the US was invited by Europe to do during World War II in terms of protecting Europe with regards to the position of Greenland and the forces we placed there. So this isn't some Johnny-come-lately concept that we've just birthed out of the West Wing. This has to do with geopolitics, geostrategy, inimical forces that threaten America and Europe together. But I advise all of your listeners and viewers, look at a map, or even better.
Oh yeah, we have seen Trump do it, haven't we? During one of his Oval Office presses on this, we have seen him present a map, and we understand the strategic positioning of Greenland, and also the fact that the US have invested plenty of money and personnel in keeping it safe over the years. It's just whether Donald Trump still has this as one of his key focuses, whether this is still right up on the agenda for him or not.
There's nothing the president has announced during his campaign or in the last 17 months in office that has fallen by the wayside. This is the biggest problem, and I'm not trying to be cute here. This is the biggest problem we, as his team members, have. It's just keeping up with a man who is indefatigable, who barely sleeps at night. I come out of my SCIF, I check on my phone, and I say, oh, my good Lord, what's happened now? Peace deal number 8. He moves at a speed and with alacrity few other human beings could ever match, maybe Maggie.
How does he do it, Sebastian? How does he do it?
It's genetics. I mean, he doesn't smoke, he doesn't drink alcohol. It's the 8 Diet Cokes a day, maybe the caffeine. But he's 25 years older than me. I can't keep up with the man, and I started working for him in 2015. I have never, ever seen the man tired. It is superhuman. It is preternatural.
Wow. I mean, he is definitely a force to be reckoned with, for sure. What is it like working for him? You've painted a picture here of it being frenetic, fast-paced, loads of different announcements going on, things popping up on your phone, left, right and centre. Tell me what it's like working for the man.
Well, look, for me, especially because I'm an immigrant, being born in the UK, the fact that an immigrant who came here legally can take the oath of allegiance to the Constitution and then end up a few years later walking around the West Wing as a deputy to the president, that still gives me chills. But beyond that, for all of us, it's incredible because he is doing tectonically historic things, whether it's the tariffs, the drug boat strikes, artificial intelligence, small nuclear reactors, peace in the Middle East, Sharm el-Sheikh, Abraham Accords 2.0. Whenever I find myself flagging for a millisecond, I think, oh my Lord, he doesn't flag, and we get back to work. Is
he going to suffer burnout, though, Sebastian? I mean, you surely have to be concerned.
Not him. He's been doing this for 80 years. 80 years. The man is simply, as we say in America, he's a Mack truck. He's like a freight train. I remember just recently we had an executive order written by one of my team members. We were asked to the Oval to present it to the world's press. Then 90 minutes later, we're back in the Oval to give him a classified briefing, and that was a Friday afternoon. And I said to my team members, not too bad for a Friday afternoon. Finally get home, crawl in bed with my wife. She switches on the news. It's 10 o'clock at night, and we see live from the Rose Garden, the president is hosting an event. And we just looked at each other and we said, how does he do it? That's what working for this man is like. We try to keep up with him. It's impossible, but we have a lot to fix in the next 2.5 years. So that's why he's doing what he's doing, because he loves America.
Well, he's going to keep you busy, so I hope you can keep up, Sebastian. Sebastian Gorka, Deputy Assistant to the President and Senior Director for Counterterrorism. Thank you for being with us.